So the next part is to create our pattern final. For that, you want to start with a clean piece of paper. If you can get a empty piece of paper, no lines, use that. If you're only using notebook paper, use the best that you can. A ruler is going to be very helpful for this. If you don't have a ruler, you can use a lined piece of paper. Just fold it in half, or any piece of paper. Just fold it in half a bunch of times until it gets kind of thick. And then, as long as you're folding it nice in half, you're actually creating a nice long straight edge that you can use to draw along and draw your lines, right? Stapler comes in handy if you want to secure that. So you can make your own straight edge just by folding up any piece of paper until it gets nice and thick, so you can run a pencil along the edge. I also recommend looking through the mail. There might be a postcard or flyer or something else. Use the edge of a book. Anything that can help you draw a straight line will come in handy. I like a ruler because, well, it's predictable. Okay, so to create, the first thing I'm going to do is create a border. And to do that, I'm going to draw an even thickness line around the outside of the paper. I'm just going to line up my ruler edge with the edge of the paper, hold it in place so it doesn't move, and then just run my pencil along it. And that gives me a nice line. If I do the same steps on each side, line up the ruler edge with the edge of the paper, hold it in place, run the pencil along, then I have the same thickness border. That's what you want to have, the same thickness border going around the outside. So if you don't have a ruler, you can just do your best to gauge and get that as thick as you can. You know, get the same thickness. You don't want to have one side super thin and the other very thick. It's just going to look off. We're just creating a frame, a border around the outside. That also gives us an interior space, right? I've got this rectangle here. This is where I'm going to set up my composition or the arrangement of my elements. Now, you can do this any way you want. You can use, I don't have the little cap here. You can add some shapes in there, right? You want to add some circles or other things, a can, coffee mug, that works, right? You can use straight lines from the ruler. But you're looking to divide this space into at least 8 different sections. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, right? So I need to have at least 5 more. So let's say I was to draw a line from one corner to the other. Well, that's going to give me, since it passes through several sections, now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Maybe I want to use a curved line. Let's see, where should I put that? I think I'll put that here. But basically, I'm trying to get this space to look interesting. Draw another. I say at least 8, but you can definitely do more. What you don't want to have is any one space that's too big. This one's pretty large right now. I'm going to end up filling this with a pattern. So that, I think I want to put like a half circle maybe here. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Just to help break it up and give myself the ability to create more patterns. And this can be arranged any number of different ways. I've got this design. I made this one the other day. Right. So I just want to arrange all the elements so I think they look interesting. Okay. Once I have that, I'm ready to start adding my patterns. Now I can take from the patterns that I've been referencing, right? So I created these patterns the other as my practice. I've got a lot of good ideas in here. I can use these. I can use new ideas. I can use ones from the references on the Schoology page. look around me, find patterns, maybe some of my clothes, maybe on the wall, who knows. Once you start looking for patterns, you find them everywhere. So here's one I've already started. You can see I'm starting to fill out with different patterns. This is just one made out of tight little circles. I'm just sketching them in pencil first. That way if I make any mistakes or need to make any adjustments, it's easier to make that change. One thing I'm trying to do as I'm placing the patterns is making sure there's at least some sort of a difference between neighboring sections so that they don't look too similar. Like right here, I can put another pattern, but I probably wouldn't put too round one. I was thinking of doing a skull and crossbone one next. So I think I'll do the skulls down here so there's a little bit of separation between that roundness. And then I'll just do my little skull designs. And there's a little jaws coming down. Like I said, anything can be a pattern. You can make letters, little pictures, just lines, letters. Did I say that already? There's like a making it look like some of them are coming out of the space is going to make it seem like the pattern's continuing out more, like it's taking up more space. All right, let's see what else. What other pattern ideas do I have here? Oh, maybe I'll do this cube one over here. So I'll just sketch in some. If you want to use the ruler, a lot of people like to use the ruler for some of these steps. Helps with the straight lines. Sometimes I'll sketch softly with the pencil and then come back with the ruler to straighten out the lines. It's extra steps, but at least that way I can kind of map everything out and then put in the time to straighten it out. So I'll do that. This other thing, I'm just going to do stripes. I'm using the marking on my ruler, and I'll just put a mark. What is this? Every like. That's a lot of lines. Let's see. Just using the markings on the ruler to make marks along that line, and then I'll take from this point. I'm just going to draw straight lines out to each of those marks. And when I go to ink this, I'm going to probably add some dark areas alternating. So the next step, once you've got everything set up and drawn in, is to now start inking things. If you have a Sharpie, that's what you're going to want to use. It's going to give you more control. If you don't have a Sharpie, any black marker, pen, anything's fine. Be careful with the Crayola or water-based markers because they tend to smear. So you got to let the line dry after you put it down. The Sharpie dries almost immediately. So first thing I'll do is I'll go back over and retrace these lines. There's no fixing this if I make a mistake, so take your time. I guess I continue that line. I got a little section there I gotta do. Okay. And now that I'm doing this with a Sharpie, I realize how tiny some areas are going to be. And I will not be able to do that the way I thought, but I can still use it. I'll just have to skip some of the lines in there. And so you run into a problem, then you make a change, you make a modification. One other thing I'm going to recommend is put something under your paper. Sharpie tends to bleed through paper, so So you don't want to have something underneath just to keep it from bleeding through. Just bounce around some, making adjustments, changes. Every step has some sort of editing process to it. Like here, there's no, like this will decimate some of these lines. Maybe if I just do like every other one instead. It's just because the marker is so thick. If I was to try and trace each of the lines I drew, it would essentially just be black. Right, so I did every other one instead. And I'm going to continue going around tracing things and, you know, cleaning things up. Once that's done, once I've finished tracing everything in Sharpie, there's one more step. Well, two really. Next is going to be adding more contrast. And that's pushing the value change, the light and the dark, and making it really pop. And one way to do it is to kind of color in areas of black in certain shapes. You know, like, so this circle design I'm working on, I've got all this empty space in between the circles. I'm going to come back and fill that in with black. These stripes down here, or over here, I might fill every other one in with black just to make it kind of different than the white paper around it, pushing the contrast, the separation between spaces. And then once all of that is done, I just have to come back and erase any of my pencil marks and clean it up. That'd be the last step. That's why I said there's two more steps. So there's tracing with a Sharpie or whatever marker you have, then pushing the contrast, and then cleaning it up. So I've already have this one that I've been working on. This is not the one I was working on. This is for a different class. This one, which I've been working on. And you can see I'm really starting to push the contrast in some area. And you have a choice to make. So like the shape I'm doing here, am I going to shade in the area around the shapes, or am I going to shade in the shapes themselves? And I think I'll make a couple of changes there. Because I did that one like that, I think I'm going to actually do the shapes themselves and leave the line as white. When you're coloring in with the Sharpie, you want to use strokes of the, so I lift and then I fill in that way. You don't want to rub the marker back and forth. That's going to blunt your tip. It's also going to potentially rip your paper. Look for any white spots. And just to warn you, Sharpies stink. Some people really don't like the smell. And if you've got an aversion to the smell, then don't use it. Use a colored pencil or a marker or something. There's other ways around this. But if you're okay with it, go with it, because it is fun and it gives you a really nice dark black. A Crayola marker tends to be a little bit more grayish black. It just doesn't have the same level of saturation. So I'm going to continue just thicken the lines here. So you don't have to color everything in. Sometimes it's just thickening a line. Is one way to do it. Like I did around here, I just outlined that. Right. But again, just to maintain some sort of separation between areas and push things, push their contrast. This one's going to be right here. Just doing curves in different directions. Got most of that stuff in place. So the last step is to come back and erase any of the pencil lines that are still floating around. You notice I did not trace the lines all the way out to the border. I did leave those open. Right? Big tip when you're erasing something like this, spread out your fingers, pointer and thumb, and erase in between them, just so that you don't end up crinkling your paper and putting a crease in it. So just erase in between. Be gentle. Take your time. You know, this is a cleanup step. You don't want to mess up your whole thing because you were careless in the last moment. Now take your time. All right. And that is our pattern final. Once you have your work finished, take a picture and submit it to the assignment. I look forward to seeing your work.